Hello, this is Hwan-san Sinim, and welcome to our program. Recently, one of the lay people who come to our home monastery approached me, and she asked me whether I could do one specifically for younger students, like ones in middle school, and I said that I had already done that too, that we had actually gone to the classroom of a middle school and taught students there how to practice sun meditation. And yet she insisted. She kept asking me, well, if you know, her own child was having a hard time focusing in his academic pursuit, and if we could just do another episode. So I did think about it, and what I would like to do now is share with you some alarming trends and statistics. Beginning about 7 or 8 years ago, there has been an epidemic of teen suicides in Palo Alto, in Northern California. Palo Alto is a city that's famous for being home to both Stanford University and Facebook. But in the years 2009 and 2010, the residents of Palo Alto had to confront the tragedy of what's known as a suicide cluster, which indicates, in this case, several students who committed suicide within a very short span of time, within that small area, within a few high schools in the Palo Alto area. So the CDC, the Center for Disease Control, was actually called in to investigate this issue. Over the years since then, Palo Alto has consistently had a teen suicide rate that is 4 or 5 times the national average. When the students were questioned on this issue, they talked a lot about the pressures of academic competition. In 2013 and 2014, in a survey of high school students in the Palo Alto area, it was found that 12% of the students had seriously considered committing suicide in the past year. So this has become, a topic of great concern and great fear among the residents of Palo Alto, and this trend continues today. Only in 2015, there was another set of suicide, again referred to as a suicide cluster. Now, what's interesting to note among these very tragic events in Palo Alto is that 40%, more than 40% of the suicides were by students who are Asian American. And so there has been some speculation by psychologists who have been investigating this whole trend that maybe there's something about Asian culture or the crisis over cultural identity that Asian American students face, and certain other aspects that are specific to Asian Americans that may be causing them to behave in this terrible and tragic way. What we also need to note that is Palo Alto is a highly affluent, highly educated area that is home to many of the professors at Stanford University. So it's particularly striking that students who live in what are enviable circumstances should feel such despair, anxiety, and loss of hope. Now, in Korea, it is well known that suicide is maybe the most important issue for Korean society. Korea is currently number 2 in the entire world in terms of having the highest suicide rate. Number 1 is Lithuania. Number 2 is Korea. In Korea, according to the latest statistics, 28.1 people commit suicide for every 100,000 inhabitants. That's the way that they collect statistical data on suicide. So that's a national problem in Korea. Korea is also consistently rated number 2 or number 3 in terms of countries with the highest rate of youth suicide. Now let me add another trend to that. On April 12th, 2017, in the English language newspaper, the English language Korean newspaper, the Korea Herald, this newspaper ran an article called 1 in 4 Koreans Suffer Mental Illness, a survey. This article was written by a Kim Da-sol. And in this article, he tells us that the Korean government's Ministry of Health and Welfare ran a survey of 5,102 people in Korea, 5,102 Korean adults, which they considered a representative sample of the entire nation. And it was found that 25% of these people who were surveyed had suffered a clinically diagnosable mental illness at least once in their lives. Even more striking, 12% of them had suffered a psychiatric disorder in the past year alone. Now, there are also analysts, broadly speaking, who believe that the global suicide rate will increase over the next 6 years by 50% or more. So what we see across the board, across the world, and within Korea and in other nations, is an increase in the rate of suicide, and there are strong indicators that this is a response to the amazing level of stress that people have to contend with in modern society, especially when it comes to young people competing in terms of academic performance, and to adults who have to compete for jobs and support themselves. When we look at these terrifying, tragic, heartbreaking trends and statistics, I think that in all conscience, I cannot present sun meditation as a tool and a method to make students, to make our children compete even harder. So although this parent asked me with great sincerity and urgency to make an episode directed toward young Korean students, instead, I would like to dedicate this episode to the parents of our students, our children, as we consider the topic, as we consider the question, in an era of unprecedented levels of stress, at least partly caused by unprecedented levels of competition to get into academic institutions and to get jobs and to compete. How should we educate our children? A few years ago, a friend of mine told me about a conversation that he was having with his wife about how to raise their oldest son. And the conversation went like this. On the one hand, they had a desire to really put a lot of pressure on this son, to make this son really focus on the things that he was good at, like soccer and playing the violin, and to really make him learn how to compete and go to a very, very high level of performance. And the reason that they were considering putting such pressure on this young boy, who was at the time only 8 or 9 years old, the reason why that they were thinking of putting so much pressure on him was because they thought that discipline and high performance are not things that you can just learn by yourself. They're not things that children are born knowing how to do. And what they wanted for their son was to know the joy and the great self-esteem that comes from trying really, really hard at doing something and becoming really, really good at it. To know what it's like to achieve something that's really great, to know what it's like to achieve a high level, an impressive level of ability in some field. So, they were not so interested in making their son, the best, making him beat other children. But what they really wanted for the child's inner growth was to have that great self-respect and that great confidence that comes from successfully doing something that's very, very hard and doing it at a very high level. But now, the fear that they had, though, was that if they put too much pressure on him, if they did that to him, that he might become neurotic and unhappy and depressed. And they were well aware of what was going on in Palo Alto, so they were also afraid of possible dangerous outcomes of raising their child in that way. So the other thing that they were considering was give the child freedom. Let him do what he likes to do. Let him find what he likes to do and what he wants to do with his life. And they felt that the great benefit of that would be that their child would be very relaxed and happy and natural and so forth. But what they feared was that the child would never know the joy of focusing on something and getting really good at it. They were always afraid that by doing this, by just letting their child do what he wants to do, that they were going to create in him a habit of just moving from one interest to the next, getting bored with it, and then doing another thing, and living his entire life without ever really doing something that he could be proud of. So they were faced with this very, very interesting question in raising their child. Should we put a lot of pressure on him and give him a lot of discipline? Or should we just let him do what he likes and give him a lot of freedom? Let's enter into meditation now, and let's listen to what Sun Master Songdam has to say about this issue in his Dharma speeches. So again, assume correct meditation posture, straighten your spine, tuck in your chin, allow the crown of your head to rise so that the line between the top of your head and your tailbone is perfectly straight and completely extended. Take the tip of your tongue and place it against the roof of your mouth. Look forward with naturally open eyes in a soft and open gaze. Be very relaxed. Relax all of the tension in your body. Inhale. And when you exhale, empty out your lungs. And now, let's engage Dantian breathing, abdominal breathing. And with each out-breath, on the out-breath, let us ask ourselves, Imoko. What is this? What is this that directs our body? What is this that thinks our thoughts? What is this that feels our emotions and physical sensations? We direct our attention inward to try to know the unknowable and to perceive the imperceptible. And when we do that, we create the great doubt. The great doubt is the heart of sun meditation. So let us enter now together into the great doubt and listen to the teachings of Sun Master Songdam.
성치 상소의선마하고 증에 교전 상인이로구나 나 현내 친살수 하면 부지신고 태하시리오나 지금 우리는 대학 입학시험을 앞둔 여러 신도님들 가정, 이것은 우리나라의 부모님 또 학생들에게는 대단히 중대한 문제로 되고 있습니다. 언젠가는 이런 문제가 해결이 돼야 할 그런 과제인데 아직까지는 범연하게 무심하게 그렇게 관심을 갖지 않을 수가 없는 것입니다. 그래서 여러분들은 그 입시를 앞두고 많은 기도를 하시고 학생들은 밤잠을 안 자고 애를 쓰고 있는 걸로 알고 있습니다마는 들어가야 할 학교나 자리는 적고 들어가려고 하는 학생은 몇 배가 이렇게 많으니 일부는 합격을 하지만은 많은 수의 학생은 또 떨어지게 됩니다. 기왕 시험을 보면 자기가 목적하는 학교에 들어가야 좋겠지만은 어피차 다 들어가지 못하고 일부만 들어갈 텐데 못 들어간 사람은 그렇다고 해서 거기서 낭망을 하고 때로는 아주 생을 포기하는 그런 학생도 있고 떨어지면 온통 집안이 초상이 난 것처럼 그런 큰 충격을 받기 마련입니다. 그러나 꼭 목적하는 대학에만 들어가야만 그 사람이 꼭 좋다고 하는 것은 아무도 보장을 할 수가 없는 것입니다. 기왕 시험을 보니 합격이 되도록 노력도 하고 기도도 하고 최선을 다할지언정 여의치 못해서 떨어진다 하더라도 그 다음으로 또 나아갈 수 있는 또 길을 모색을 해서 또 잘 새로운 용기와 침착성을 가지고 다시 또 도전을 해야지 거기서 우리가 생을 포기하거나 낙담을 해서 주저앉아서는 아니 되는 것입니다. 그러기 위해서는 학생들 자신보다도 그 학부모가 대단히 책임이 무거운 것입니다. 공부해라, 공부해라. 이제 떨어지면 너는 영 그만이다. 계속 압박을 하고 해서 계속 공부 조금만 한눈을 팔아도 공부하라 해가지고 학생들은 거의 긴장과 초조와 불안으로 공부가 잘 되지 않고 공부를 하는 것이 더 마음을 안정을 하고 제 정신을 가지고 공부를 해야 공부가 되는 것이지 계속 몰아붙이고 이 책찍기를 한다고 해서만 공부가 되는 것이 아닙니다. 그런 의미에서 운동도 적당히 해야 하고 영양도 적당히 섭취해야 하고 잠도 최소한도로 자야 하는 것이고 그러면서 그리 해야만 공부하는 시간이 효율적으로 공부가 되는 것입니다. 그런 것을 모르고서 같이 어머니와 학생이 날을 새면서 그래가지고 벌써 정신도 피로하고 육체도 피로하고 그래가지고 아무리 공부를 하려고 해도 머릿속에 들어가지는 않거든. 그것은 그 간곡히 공부를 열심히 해서 합격하도록 하기를 바라는 부모님의 마음은 충분히 이해가 되지만 그것이 오히려 역효과가 난다고 하는 것을 아시고 너무 그렇게 지나치게 몰아붙이고 해가지고 역효과가 나지 않도록 그렇게 부탁을 하고 또 만일의 경우 떨어진다 하더라도 또 다음으로 가는 길이 있다. 금년에 못 되면 또 내년에 갈 길도 있고 대학에 정 못 들어가면은 전문대학도 가고 전문대학에 안 되면 기술이라도 배워서 네가 너 소질과 능력 따라서 가도록 느긋하게 이렇게 여유 있는 말로 학생을 잘 다스려야 하리라고 생각을 합니다. 너무 지나치게 몰아붙여가지고 그 부모 합격이 안 되었을 때 자살하는 그런 학생이 해마다 보도가 되는 것을 여러분도 잘 아실 것입니다. 그렇게 되어서는 아니 된 것입니다. 우리나라가 교육 제도가 잘못되어 가지고 결국은 그런 국민학교, 중학교, 고등학교 시절을 완전히 대학 입학만을 위해서 소년 시절의 공부를 즐겁게 보람있게 지내지를 못하고 지옥 속에서 공부를 하고 있는 학생들이 너무나 불쌍하고 안타깝습니다. 앞으로 반드시 그런 교육 제도가 잘 고쳐져야 하리라고 생각합니다마는 그러기 전에 학생들은 지쳐 쓰러져서 대학에 들어가도 폐인이 되고 대학을 졸업하고 나와서도 제대로 사회생활을 못하게 되는 그런 경우도 허다한 것입니다. 자기 마음껏 누리려고 하는 탐욕심과 그것이 여의치 못하면 진심을 내고 또 탐심을 내고 진심을 내고 그것을 수없이 되풀이해 나가고 용감하게 놓아버릴 줄 모르는 것이 그것이 어리석음이거든. 탐심과 진심과 어리석음 이 세 가지 독한 마음으로 인해서 끝없는 사막도 윤회를 하게 되는 것입니다. 오용락이라 하는 것은 아무리 추구해봤자 영원성이 없는 것이고 내 뜻대로 얻어지기도 어렵고 설사 얻어졌다 해도 오랫동안 내 욕심껏 누릴 수가 없다고 하는 것이고 그런 것을 얻고 유지하고 누리다가는 결국은 지옥의 사막도 뱉기는 갈 곳이 없다고 하는 사실을 분명하게 깨닫고 인식을 하고 용감하게 그것을 놔버릴 줄 알아야 합니다.
Sun Master Songdam delivered this speech, this Dharma speech, more than 20 years ago on November 6, 1994. More than 20 years ago, he correctly perceived that increasing pressure on our students would lead them to behave self-destructively. He urged us to change our current educational system, and he urged parents to soften their approach to their children and to research other possible avenues of living in society if they couldn't get into the schools that they wanted. Now, it's clear that we did not listen to Sun Master Songdam's prescriptions, and we can now see the results of that in the world around us, particularly in Korea, in these tragic suicide rates that we see across the board, and in particular among young people. And we can also see that this is a trend that has spread globally. So how can we put Sun Master Songdam's teaching, this idea of talking with our children and investigating together, all the possible avenues of life in society, how could we do that in concrete detail? Is there a system or a method that we can use to actually apply the teachings that he suggested to us more than 20 years ago? And in this light, I would like to suggest the following. Instead of unilaterally putting a lot of pressure on our children so that they can compete harder, or on the opposite end, just letting them be free, instead of making decisions involving the raising of our children unilaterally, I would like to suggest that we learn as early as possible how to dialogue and meaningfully communicate with our children even when they're very young. Now, I believe that in order to do this, we have to actually teach our students, our children, the skills of communication, how to dialogue, because dialoguing calls upon a variety of special skills: the ability to recognize your own thoughts and feelings, the ability to express them appropriately, the ability to hold a conversation with another person in a meaningful way. Just because a child can talk doesn't mean that they can dialogue. Just because a child can speak doesn't mean that they know how to communicate. So if we could do this in a systematic way with our students and children when they're very young, I think that would be enormously helpful, that each family could act as a team in terms of for raising our precious children. So in this light, I would like to suggest 5 basic skills that all children ought to learn as early as possible and to develop throughout our lives. In fact, these skills apply, I believe, to all of us. So the first skill I would like to suggest is breathing, learning how to breathe correctly. Breathing is the key to self-regulation of mind and body. Breathing is the cornerstone for all of the arts and all of the traditions of mental and physical cultivation in Asia. All forms of sports, even military arts, dance, everything is based on correct application of breathing method. So as early as possible, and I've actually taught very young children, kindergarten children, how to perform Dantian breathing. I know that very young children can actually do this. Number 2, I would like to suggest the skill of emotional intelligence. There are different ways to define emotional intelligence. I would like to simply say that maybe we could, for this purpose, we could just say that emotional intelligence is the ability to recognize and understand what emotion that you are feeling. And the way that we can teach our children to do this is to ask them to name the emotion that they're feeling, to literally say to them, what are you feeling right now? Sadness, anger, happiness, boredom, whatever. And when we teach them this, we also teach them not to be ashamed of their own emotions, to be able to embrace and accept their own emotions and to recognize them without embarrassment, not to bury their emotions because they're afraid that other people will know what they're feeling. So in this way, we can teach children to recognize their own emotions and to own them, to take responsibility for them instead of trying to hide their emotions away. The third skill that I would like to suggest is the skill of emotional self-regulation. Because when we accept and understand our own emotions, we also need to know that it's not always appropriate to express all of our emotions, especially the negative ones. But again, we don't want to use the primitive method of suppressing our emotions. So we can teach our children and our students sun meditation, using a technique of posture, breathing, and mental focus. We can learn how to calm our emotions down and return to a state of mental clarity and emotional peace. And all of these skills build upon one another. The fourth skill I would like to suggest is listening skill. Now, listening skill doesn't just mean that you understand what someone is saying. It doesn't mean that you understand the information that's being presented to you. This is not the kind of listening skill that I'm talking about. Listening is more than just knowing what's being said. I do believe that our young people, our children, also need to be able to have the listening skill of empathy, of knowing why, of being able to recognize why this person is saying what they're saying. What's their motivation? What's their intention? And the way we can teach this skill to our children and our students is simply by asking them, do you understand what I just said? Can you tell me? Can you repeat back to me what I just said? Of course, you'll have to do this in a non-threatening and gentle way. Again, it's the skill of empathy in addition to the skill of listening. The final skill that I would like to suggest is the skill of speaking. Now, speaking is more than just talking, obviously. Our children and students need to know how to express themselves in a clear way that's easily understood by whoever's listening to them. And the way we can do that is simply by asking our children and our students to explain themselves again more clearly. Tell them what confuses you. Tell them what's unclear and say, could you be a little bit more specific? Could you try that again? And again, it's not a test. We don't want to put too much pressure on them. So from a very early age, we build a unique bond with our children and our students. We build almost a tradition of communication. And it is in this relationship that we can consider the question of how much pressure should we or should we not give to our children and our students. Our children and our students are given a voice, are given an opportunity to put in their opinion about all these things that affect how their lives will be in the future. And we can give our children and our students the trust that they too possess intelligence, if not life experience yet. And again, in this way, the family becomes a team devoted to the future welfare of the children and, of course, all of the members of the family. Now, many parents, especially Asian parents, especially Asian American parents, really worry that if their child does not perform well in school, that this means that they'll have an unhappy, unsuccessful life in society ahead. And they're also worried that if their children are performing poorly, if they're underperforming at school, that this is somehow an indication that their children lack intelligence. And so they may begin to feel ashamed or embarrassed about their children's performance. And in this regard, I would really like to suggest that parents understand that there is more than one form of intelligence. There is more than one kind of talent, one kind of skill that can be used to lead a happy, productive, and meaningful life in society. In 1983, the American psychologist Howard Gardner proposed and theorized that there are actually nine separate kinds of distinct human intelligence. So the first kind of intelligence, according to him, is musical. The ability to play music, to compose it, and perform it, and so forth. The second kind of intelligence he called naturalist intelligence. And this is intelligence regarding natural processes in our natural environment. And people like farmers and forest rangers display this kind of intelligence as they look at the natural processes going on around them in their environment and then react to them in their respective jobs. The third kind of intelligence is called visual spatial. Intelligence regarding visual forms and physical space, and painters, sculptors, and architects make use of this kind of intelligence. The next kind of intelligence is called logical mathematical. And this is a talent and an intelligence with numbers and with logical principles. And of course, mathematicians, scientists, and accountants all make use of this form of intelligence. The next form of intelligence is linguistic. And people who use language, like writers, make use of this kind of intelligence. The next kind of intelligence is called intrapsychic, internal intelligence, the ability to observe and understand internal mental processes of thought and feeling. And of course, psychotherapists, psychiatrists have used this kind of intelligence. Even actors use this kind of intelligence to create their performance on the stage and on the screen. The next kind of intelligence is called interpersonal, which means intelligence in social relationships. And of course, leaders of all kinds use this kind of intelligence, politicians, people who work in business, and so forth. These are so-called people skills. And then after that kind of intelligence, there's also a thing called physical intelligence, which athletes and dancers, to name a few, use. And yes, we can see here that actually being good at sports, being good at dancing is actually a form of intelligence. I think this is important to recognize. So often parents may look at their children who are very good at school, at sports, but not so great at academic performance and accuse them of lacking intelligence. This is not so, because athletes and dancers display amazing feats of memory. They learn very complicated physical moves in a very short time. Especially athletes like baseball players have to make split-second decisions in the heat of play, which again is a form of intelligence. So there is such a thing as physical intelligence. The final intelligence that Howard Gardner proposed, he called existential intelligence. And this is intelligence or understanding with regard to the larger questions of life and death, the meaning of life, the question of impermanence, death, and so forth. And of course, philosophers have this kind of intelligence, and perhaps people who practice religion, like priests and ministers and monks, also possess this kind of intelligence. Now, in the years that followed since 1983, when Howard Gardner first proposed this theory of 9 different kinds of intelligence, he has added other forms of intelligence. He has added a thing called moral intelligence, knowing what is right and wrong in a situation. He considers that a kind of intelligence, and as recently as 2016, he added the idea of teaching intelligence, that the ability to teach other people knowledge and skills and so forth is also a form of intelligence in its own right. Now, when we look at theories like this, when we see that psychologists are studying this and researching this and taking this very seriously, what we can immediately understand is that there is more than one form of intelligence. There is more than one kind of talent or skill that can help us live in society. And just because a child or a student is not performing well in school does not mean that they lack intelligence, generally speaking. Currently, our modern academic system really only tests us, really emphasizes logical mathematical intelligence, meaning math and science, and then linguistic intelligence, meaning writing and expressing our thoughts and feelings and so forth. All the other forms of intelligence that Howard Gardner has described really are not cultivated to a great extent in the current modern educational system. When we see that, when we understand that, we can look at our children and our students who may seem like they're underperforming at school, and we can say, well, then, as Sun Master Songdam suggested, well, then maybe you have other forms of intelligence. It's most likely that your gifts are elsewhere, and you can investigate those other talents, those other hidden forms of intelligence that our children and our students may have, and build for them a path to the future. Now, recently, I heard some young Korean parents who had children in elementary school talking about the future of their children, and they told me that they have a sort of a new strategy for raising their children in the intensely competitive academic system of Korea. They have been considering the idea of observing their children very closely in these early years of elementary school. And if it's quite clear that their children are not very interested in academic study or don't have a talent for that, then instead of putting a lot of pressure on them and creating what Sun Master Songdam himself called a kind of living hell for the children, and investing all of this money on personal tutors and academies and software and whatever else, the high cost of supporting the education of our children, instead of doing that, they are considering saving all of that money, saving it over time as their child grows up, and instead dialoguing with their children and exploring, well, what does our child like to do? What do they have passion about? What do they have talent about? And when they come of age and they're ready to pursue their professional goals, when they've decided on their professional goals, they'll be able to provide financial support with the money that they saved over the years. Now, when I heard this plan, I thought that is a wonderful idea. This recognizes that people can be successful in more than one way, that we don't all have to be straight A students in school. This also recognizes that children should be involved in the decision-making process for their future prospects. So I very much applaud these parents who thought of this, what in Korea is an original parenting and educational strategy for these very young children who are growing up in an ultra-competitive society. Now, I would like to share with you a story of something that happened a couple of years ago. I was at one of the universities that I teach at, and this university is actually one of the most highly rated universities in Korea. The students who go to this university are considered some of the best students in Korea. So I was talking with these students, and I suggested to them that they take the time to learn what they truly love the most, what in their heart, not with just their minds, but in their heart, in their gut, what do they love the most? What do they value the most? What inspires them the most? what excites them the most. So I gave a very passionate speech about this, and at the end of it, I remember one of the students, a brilliant young man with a really good heart and a really good personality, he looked at me in a kind of despair and he said, but we don't know how to find what we love the most. We don't know how to decide what we value the most. And I remember that as a particularly heartbreaking moment, that in spite of their great intelligence and their great concentration ability and their ability to perform under high levels of stress, they had never been taught the skill of self-exploration. So when I saw that, it made me very sad, and it made me realize that when we place extreme pressure on our children without communicating with them, we think we're teaching them discipline, but what we're really teaching them is blind obedience. And so instead of doing that, I'm not saying don't put pressure on the children, I'm saying teach them how the skills of managing that pressure and communicating with other people. And if they want to do that, they should learn sun meditation. And I do believe that they should learn the 5 skills of breathing, emotional intelligence, emotional self-regulation, listening, and speaking. Now, once again, let's all enter into meditation together. And in our meditation, let's listen once again to the Dharma speech of Sun Master Songdam as he teaches us what is most important in life.
그 앉는 자세와 호흡하는 법과 화두 트는 법을 구체적으로 알려면은 여러 번 들으면서 딱 자세도 가다듬고 호흡도 거기서 호흡법도 가다듬고 화두 트는 법도 딱 해서 자연히 공부하는 법을 옳게 알아가지고 열심히 해야지 방법은 잘 모르고 그래가지고 욕심만 앞질러가지고 우격다짐으로 막 좁은 근육에다가 송아지 몰아넣듯이 그건 안 되거든. 모든 것은 바른 방법이 있는 것이고 바른 방법으로 열심히 해야지 바른 방법을 모르고 열심히 하다 보면 본의 아니게 부작용이 일어나서 고생을 하게 되니까 그렇게 하시고 화두는 이 무엇고 알 수 없는 의심 이 세상에 사람이 나와서 할 것은 이것밖에 없는 것이 정말 목숨 바쳐서 할 것은 이것밖에 없어. 다른 것은 자기에게 주어진 책임, 자기에게 주어진 직업, 자기에게 주어진 위치에서 모든 것을 열심히 성실히 해야 한 것은 사실이나 진짜 목숨 바칠 것은 나의 생사 문제를 해결하는 또는 영원한 행복을 누리기 위해서는 이 무엇보다는 더 좋은 것은 없는 것입니다.
So Sun Master Songdam tells us in his Dharma speech that at the end of the day, in life, the truly important issue is the issue of impermanence. And the only way to resolve the issue of impermanence is through the practice of sun meditation and the attainment of enlightenment. And this too is something I believe we ought to talk about with our children and our students. That life is impermanent, that there are great questions regarding the meaning of our life and the meaning of our eventual death. And this too is something that we should approach with intelligence, and this too should be part of our natural human education. And once again, I will conclude with the traditional Buddhist greeting. May we all attain enlightenment. Once again, please assume meditation posture, and together we will enter into our closing meditation.